So good evening. We would like to call this special meeting of the Board of Trustees to order. Do I need a motion for that? I'm sorry.
No.
Wasn't expecting to do this. Okay. So can we start with the pledge? I'll go ahead and lead us in the pledge. Please stand. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wonderful, thank you. So there was no action taken in closed session. So may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Ocampo, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Trustee Rojas. All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
And we will begin with individuals desiring to address the board.
Great. So I wanted to read our normal process for public comment. So public comments are allowed 3 minutes in addressing the board. The board may limit the total time of public input of any item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for any public presentation depending on a topic or the number of persons wishing to be heard. So just a reminder, each of these are limited to 3 minutes. And so at 3 minutes, we will move forward to the next one. I have about 30 of these. You do have the option in your policy to reduce total time to 20 minutes. That's a discussion and a decision of yours. So I will stop there if you want to address that or not.
I make the motion. I have all 30 read.
I would agree with that.
I second.
Okay.
All in
It's not an
favor?
action- Yeah, it's not an action item, it's just direction. Yeah,
Oh,
just
okay. I would like for everything to be read also.
I agree with that.
all right. Let me get us set up here. Okay, so let's start. I do want to address a few of these several came in after 4 o'clock, the deadline, so those are not going to be read, as well as we follow policy that anonymous letters were emailed to you. Those are not read for public comment. And with that as well is the, I'll just get to it. So first one here. Good evening, Board President Tabera, Board Trustees, Superintendent Burns, and Cabinet. As a community member, parent, and grandparent, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the school board and superintendent for their continuous support and dedication to ensuring our students get the best education they need during distance learning. There have been many obstacles our students as well as parents have had to go through, but they worked together as a family and succeeded. If the school district has to reopen, then I ask the board to consider 1 grade level only until it is safe to reopen for all students. I do not believe that because the state is opening up amusement parks and other areas that it is safe for all of our students to return to school. The economy is driving to open up more businesses. Until science data states that all of our students are safe to return, then we should consider small cohorts. As a parent, it is my responsibility to take care of my child when they are feeling overwhelmed and self-isolated. We should be reaching out to our community resources to get the help they need to deal with the issues that they are going through. Yes, we can ask our schools to help us, but it is the responsibility of us as parents to take care of our students' needs and not pawn it off on our schools. It's called being a parent. We have students and staff members that have lost a family member while they themselves were trying to cope with distance learning, work, and helping their siblings. These families have spoken up by not wanting to send their children back to school for fear of losing another family member. Until it is deemed safe to return all students back on our campus, I say to the board to continue in distance learning with an emphasis on in-person small cohorts that would best fit our district. Transition our students slowly until we are able to bring back all students back to a normal school day. I ask the board not to take the pressure from individuals to be the tool to open up our schools until all the precautionary measures have been taken and all of our families and students feel safe to return to school. Our parents and students who live in 93905 and 6 deserve the district's assurance that their children will be safe at school. Respectfully, Lucy Vega, parent. Was the beeping a 3-minute timer?
No, that was a board member entering.
Okay, all right. Just making sure. Wow, that was quick. Okay. Next one. I am a teacher at North Salinas High School, and I request the board to vote to remain in distance learning. We do not need another chaotic upheaval and more confusing schedule changes in addition to complicated, stressful, and expensive last-minute logistics of daycare and transportation. Please let us finish out the school year in our distance learning groove and start afresh in person in August. Megan Peterson, teacher. Mr. Burns and board members, I'm asking you to please wait to open up schools. I understand how parents can think it's okay to jump back into sports and school, but what they don't understand is we are not in the clear to get back to normal schooling. Yes, people are getting vaccinated, but that does not mean one can still not get sick. Even with precautions that I took and with limited staff on site, I was exposed to COVID on site and ended up getting COVID. Imagine how worried I was taking this illness home to my family and that all live in my house, we have problems with adults wearing masks properly. So how is it that when students come back on campus that they will wear a mask properly, that they too will social distance? Let me tell you one thing as an employee of the district for 25 years as a parent of a 9th grade student. Most teens believe they know more than an adult. And to be honest, bringing students back now wouldn't be a good idea because things are not 100% good. And even when the school year begins, they may not be 100%, but a bit better. So take into consideration of the employees and the risk that we take, and we can take this home to our loved ones. Unfortunately, we all know someone that has had COVID, and we all know someone that's passed away from COVID. Unfortunately, one of our classified staff lost his life to COVID. It's just still too soon to go about everything like it's okay. Mary Jane Bonda, employee. Hello, board members and Superintendent Burns. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts. I have 2 students at Salinas High, a 10th and a 12th grader. My husband and I both work in ag and have worked every day during the pandemic. In my opinion, all industries have had to figure out how to function and thrive with the constraints of COVID. It's time for education to step up and do what's best for students. Soon, all teachers will have had the opportunity to be vaccinated. If there are teachers or families that do not feel safe to return to school, then those teachers can be the distance learning teachers to those students. My children and most others need to be back in person. They need to be in a classroom with their teacher. They need to be sitting next to their peers, and they need to get out of the house. It's time. With masks, sanitation, and minimal distancing, it's safe. Please follow the science and not the fear. Kids need school, structure, and socialization. Don't keep these kids home any longer, withering away in their homes to shells of what they used to be. Please acknowledge the social issues that come with distance learning and all the mental health issues that are arising in kids that have never previously had any issues. It's sad to watch. Do what's right and follow the lead of other counties and states. Kids need in-person learning. Shannon Montemurno, parent. Dear Board of Trustees, my name is Angela Ariola, and I've been a licensed home daycare provider in Monterey County for over 15 years. I would like to let the board know that childcare was never shut down during COVID. Some providers may have chosen to close on their own, for a short period of time or due to the COVID exposure. With that being said, 99% of childcare remains open for business in our county. The state of California has never shut us down throughout the entire pandemic. Please do not use childcare or lack of as a reason to keep students and teachers out of the classroom. Childcare is available. Angela Ariola. Dear Salinas Union High School District board members, I don't want to regurgitate stories you have all heard over and over. I'm going to tell you two stories that are specific to my family. I have two students at Salinas High School, a freshman and a senior. Neither one has set foot in a classroom for two of the most memorable years of high school. My freshman, my otherwise fun, go-lucky, smart, and witty child put his head through a bedroom wall out of utter frustration on the second day of his freshman year. Did you hear me? He put his head through the bedroom wall. I have tried to help him, jumping back and forth between internet tabs, trying to cue an instructional video to be the part he needs to re-listen to, internet freezing, video stalling. I would most likely put my head through a wall as well. My senior had to make up his 11th grade English class. He was also beginning to fail his senior English class. To bring his grades up and earn his credits, we had to get a tutor. By the end of this year, we will have spent thousands of dollars on a tutor. I feel guilty at the fact that we are able to do this for our child, as I know that there are many others that were or are in this position that have absolutely no resources to help them get out of a failing class. In this instance, we were fortunate. What about others? Children are being left behind at no fault of their own. A year ago, I understood the uncertainty. A year ago, I understood the chaos. A year ago, I understood the unorganization. At this point, there is no excuse. At this point, you are all either lazy or incompetent, maybe both. You are failing our children. Time to step up and be educators you are paid to be. Time to step up and figure it out. Our children's education and mental health is failing, and it is on your watch. Open our schools. Jennifer Maestri. Board of Trustees, Superintendent Burns, and Cabinet. I am a concerned employee of the Salinas Union High School District. My concerns are that we are not fully prepared to reopen our schools. What protocols are in place to reopen our schools? If we have an outbreak, what protocol is in place to protect our students and staff? Our students have not yet vaccinated, nor will we know when they will be able to receive the vaccine. Our students can be asymptomatic and can take the virus home to their families. What will the district tell the family that your child took the virus home to your household? A majority of our employees are in the process of being vaccinated. Our numbers in this county may be going down, but how many are being tested? We should not open our schools because we are being pressured. We need to open our school when it's safe to do so. How many of our students have lost family members to COVID? Here on the east side, our students come from ag families are in the process of returning to this area. Alsau High School has over 3,000 students enrolled. Can you imagine our hallways during passing period and lunch? Will all of those students follow CDC guidelines for distancing and wearing masks? We do not have the manpower at this time to keep all areas clean every 45 minutes. If you are going to reopen, we ask that you do so in small cohorts and not the entire student population for the safety of our student, staff, and parents. Patricia Laura. Superintendent Burns and members of the school board. I was in virtual attendance for the board meeting held on March 9 and listened to all the letters read for public comment, as well as the meeting. I am a nurse and my husband is a firefighter. We, like all other essential workers, worked through the entire pandemic. We worked without pay incentives, set childcare, and until January, unvaccinated. I respect this virus tremendously, but I also have seen over the past year that it is possible to work safely alongside it. There was a lot of question on what is the rush to reopen. The point that seems to be missed here is that we are discussing schools opening because case numbers have dropped significantly. Teachers are being vaccinated and therefore the virus poses less of a risk to our community. Middle and high schools are cleared to open now that we are in the red tier. I understand you are being held to state and county restrictions, but plenty of districts have shown leadership in valuing the education of their students. You've had a year to plan for this moment. The time has come. In addition, as we have discussed at length, opening schools is critical for the well-being of our children in our community. In consideration of the students and families who say distance learning is working for them, I urge you to truly think about what that means. These kids are also sitting isolated in their rooms day after day with little in-person interaction. How can you tell me that is healthy, that this won't have a negative impact on their future? As far as the students who say they don't want to return, this does not surprise me at all, having 2 teenagers in my own house. A year is a significant amount of time in their lives. It absolutely will be hard for them to adjust to having to get up, get dressed, be around people, be accountable for schoolwork, and take tests in the classroom. This is why it is essential that we don't allow more time to pass. The longer these kids are out of school, the more damage will be done. It is important to acknowledge that this virus will not completely disappear. It may live among us every year, along with influenza virus and all the other viruses we see annually. There was a mention of returning to school when it was 100% safe. This is an unrealistic expectation. So many factors can contribute to whether a school is safe. It is time to value education again. It is essential, and we've been waiting for this day to arrive. We can't keep these kids home forever. This is not rushing to reopen. The facts show that it is time to reopen. Natasha Nava. And I'm going to pause there for just a second and have our translator, Maria Ruiz, read a couple letters that she has in Spanish for us.
Good afternoon, Cabinet. Good afternoon, everyone, board members and superintendent. So I'm going to start off with the first letter. It's from Building Healthy Communities, Salinas. Dear Salinas Union High School leadership, with the arrival of the COVID-19 vaccine, it may feel that the end of the pandemic is in sight. Building Healthy Communities appreciates the hard work that your school district has done in order to ensure that our students are safe. It is because of this that we are writing to you today. We know that schools must reopen and we cannot stand in the way of that. Being present for class is vital for the majority of students to be able to learn. What we ask, however, is that you continue to collaborate with students, parents, and community stakeholders as you transition back to in-person learning. We have been working closely with the County of Monterey to promote safety measures against COVID-19, and what we have seen recently is alarming. The county recently reported that testing has gone down by half. More individuals are refusing to wear their masks, our restaurants open, and we know that many health officials expect a spike with spring break on the horizon. In sum, we want to clear what we hope is the last phase of the pandemic. We need to work closer than ever. As you know, our work is to center community voice and to look through a racially equitable lens. In other words, those closest to the issue are closest to the solution. That is why we propose that as means of putting student, parent, line staff, and teachers safely at the center of your district. Share meaningful engagement about your reopening plan and alternative virtual learning options with parents and students. Be responsive to parent and student safety needs as they return. Draft a mental health with stakeholder input to provide social emotional support to students, teachers, parents, staff who will be returning to school with anxiety, trauma, lack of social interactions, lack of structure from a year of being sheltered in place, not employ punitive practices for the rest of the school year, and look to mitigate them in the future, as many of these students may be in need of social emotional support. Put in place policies and practices that address racism and anti-Blackness on our campuses, ensuring that teachers and students have access to training that addresses the root causes of disparities and eliminates the lack of support for our students of color. We would like to thank Superintendent Dan Burns for meeting with youth and parents to discuss the reopening of schools, as well as hearing our questions and concerns. We look forward to collaborating on meaningful engagement and further conversations with the district. We thank you for your time and consideration, and know that we are always working to bring the most positive community voice to the table. Sincerely, building healthy communities. La Cosecha, Parents, Padres Unidos, and various district parents. Now we have a comment. Would you like me to read this in Spanish as well? This is from Building Healthy Communities.
Yeah, just read all of the ones that we sent to you. That would be fine.
Sounds good. Estimado liderazgo del Distrito Unido de las Preparatorias de Salinas. Con la llegada de la vacuna de COVID-19, se puede sentir que el final de la pandemia está cerca. Construyendo comunidades saludables, aprecia todo el esfuerzo que su distrito escolar ha hecho para asegurar que nuestros estudiantes estén seguros. Es por eso que les estamos escribiendo el día de hoy. Sabemos que las escuelas tienen que reabrir y que no podemos impedirlo. El estar presente durante clases es esencial para que la mayoría de los estudiantes puedan aprender. No obstante, lo que pedimos es que continúen colaborando con los estudiantes, padres y miembros de la comunidad en lo que comienzan a transicionar al aprendizaje en persona. Hemos estado colaborando con el Condado de Monterrey para promover medidas seguras contra el COVID-19 y lo que hemos visto recientemente es alarmante. El condado recientemente reportó que los exámenes de COVID han bajado a la mitad. Los individuos se están rehusando a utilizar la máscara mientras que los restaurantes se están abriendo. Y sabemos que muchos oficiales de salud esperan un aumento de casos ahora que se aproximan las vacaciones de primavera. En fin, si queremos terminar con lo que esperamos que es la fase final de esta pandemia, necesitamos colaborar más que nunca. Como saben, trabajamos para centrar la voz comunitaria y ver a través de un lente de la equidad racial. En otras palabras, los que están más cerca al problema son los que están más cerca de la solución. Es por eso que los proponemos significa poniendo la seguridad de los estudiantes, padres, trabajadores de las oficinas y maestros como lo más importante de su distrito. Compartan de manera transparente sobre sus planes de reapertura y opciones alternativas de aprendizaje virtual con padres y estudiantes. Sea consciente de las necesidades de padres y estudiantes en lo que regresan. Crear un plan de salud mental con sugerencias de partes interesadas para proveer apoyo socioemocional para estudiantes, maestros, padres y trabajadores que posiblemente van a regresar con ansiedad, trauma, falta de estructura después de un año de refugio en hogar. No utilizar medidas punitivas por el resto del año escolar y procurar mitigarlas en el futuro, ya que muchos estudiantes pueden necesitar apoyo socioemocional. Cree pólizas y prácticas que aborde el racismo y actitudes ante los grupos en el campus, asegurándose que los maestros y estudiantes tengan acceso a entrenamiento que toque la raíz de las disparidades y elimine la falta de apoyo de estudiantes de color. Les agradecemos su tiempo y consideración y sepan que siempre estamos trabajando para traer lo más positivo de la voz comunitaria a la mesa. Sinceramente, padres, jóvenes y representantes comunitarios. And we have 2 other comments. Buenas tardes, miembros de la mesa directiva, presidente y superintendente. Mi nombre es Alma Loredo. Soy madre de 2 jovencitas de este distrito. Soy miembro líder de Comité Padres Unidos, Concilios Escolares de Alice High, La Paz Middle School y el Comité de OCAP de este distrito. Y Padres Unidos bajo la organización Construyendo Comunidades Saludables. Y estoy aquí en representación de los padres de este comité y apoyando el liderazgo del grupo de los jóvenes de la cosecha, con los que colaboramos de cerca. Estoy enviando este comentario ya que sentimos que no estamos siendo tomados en cuenta para los planes que el distrito tiene en la reapertura de escuelas y las decisiones que se están tomando. Están dejando fuera las opiniones y las sugerencias y las necesidades de los jóvenes, que son los que tienen la experiencia, y los padres, que somos los que sabemos sus necesidades. Queremos que el distrito tenga la transparencia y nos dé la oportunidad de involucrarnos auténticamente en la planeación y la toma de decisiones que van a impactar el futuro de los estudiantes. Como expertos que somos, con esto quiero decir que queremos que se cambien los métodos de involucramiento de los padres y jóvenes, que se creen más espacios para tener conversaciones auténticas y buscar soluciones juntos, padres y jóvenes, y no solo tener una junta o responder una encuesta, porque sentimos que eso nos limita y no podemos expresar nuestras dudas e inquietudes. Pedimos que nos den la oportunidad de colaborar con los departamentos del distrito y aumentar el involucramiento de padres y jóvenes, que sean tomadas en cuenta todas las opiniones para crear un plan que acomode a todos los estudiantes y no deje fuera a las familias y los jóvenes que tienen mayores necesidades y necesitan más apoyo. Espero que sea tomada en cuenta mi petición y me pongo a la orden como la persona de contacto representando al Comité de Padres Unidos para un seguimiento en esa propuesta. Respetuosamente, Alma Loredo. Good afternoon, member of the Board of Directors, President, and Superintendent. My name is Alma Loredo. I am the mother of 2 girls from this district, and I am a member of Alisal High, La Paz Middle School Councils, and the LCAP Committee of the district. I am a leading member of the United Parents Committee, Padres Unidos, under the organization Building Healthy Communities, and I am here on behalf of the parents of this committee and supporting the leadership of La Cosecha Youth Group, with whom we collaborate closely. I am sending this comment because we feel that we are not being taken into account for the plans that the district has in the reopening of schools, and the decisions that are being taken are leaving out the opinions and suggestions and the needs of the young people who are the ones experiencing this pandemic. We are the ones to know their needs as parents as well. We want the district to have transparency and give us the opportunity to be authentically involved in planning and making decisions that will impact the future of students as experts that we are. By this, I mean that we want to change the methods of involvement of parents and young people, that more spaces are created to have authentic conversations and seek solutions together, parents and young people, involving parents and young people, and not just having a meeting or answering surveys, because we feel that this limits us and we cannot express our doubts and concerns. We ask that you give us the opportunity to collaborate with the district department and increase the involvement of parents and youth, and have all of their opinions taken into account to create a plan that accommodates all students and does not leave out families and children, young people who have greater needs, those who have greater needs and need more support. I hope that my request will be taken into account, and I put myself at the order as the contact person representing Padres Unidos United Parents Committee for a follow-up on this proposal. Respectfully, Alma Loredo. And the last comment. Good. My name is Gabriela Silva, mother of our district, member of the ALCAP, ELAC, DELAC committee, member and organizing of Padres Unidos under BHC. As a mother and father of our district and our community, We are interested in the needs of creating a mental health plan with suggestions from interested parties to provide social emotional support for students, teachers, parents, and workers who are likely to return with trauma, anxiety, and lack of structure after a year of shelter in their homes. As a mother and community, we are concerned about the mental health of young people and their families, and above all, the help has increased throughout the district, the supervision of the work that is being done to get them to continue as we move forward. It hasn't been easy, but with the support of all of us, with all of our support, we will succeed. We need a lot of help and adequate communication that is accessible, where there is a platform that parents and students can express their current concerns and that we can feel included in the decisions that are made. Respectfully, Gabriela Silva. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Gabriela Silva, madre de nuestro distrito, miembro del comité de LCAP, DELAC, ELAC y miembro y organizador de Padres Unidos bajo Building Healthy Communities. Como mamá y padre de nuestro distrito y comunidad, nos interesan las necesidades de crear un plan de salud mental con sugerencias de parte interesadas para proveer apoyo socioemocional para estudiantes, maestros, padres y trabajadores que posiblemente van a regresar con traumas, ansiedad y falta de estructura después de un año de refugio en los hogares. Como madre y comunidad nos preocupa la salud mental de los jóvenes y sus familias, y sobre todo que se incremente la ayuda en todo el distrito con supervisión del trabajo que se está haciendo para sacarlos adelante. Sabemos que no es fácil, pero con el apoyo de todos saldremos adelante. Necesitamos mucha ayuda y sobre todo la comunicación adecuada que sea accesible, donde se encuentra una plataforma que puedan expresarse los padres como los estudiantes nuestras preocupaciones actuales y podamos sentirnos incluidos en las decisiones que se tomen. Respetuosamente, Gabriela Silva. And that concludes the 3 comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ruiz. I will keep going with several more that I have. To the Board of Trustees, Salinas Union High School District, guided by educational equity and through innovation, discovery, and support, the Salinas Union High School District will meet the academic, behavioral, and social emotional needs of each student to ensure achievement of their aspirations. That is the mission of the board, to be stewards of our Salinas Union High School District, doing what is best for each student. We have witnessed and heard from many of the members of this board that they are worried about staff and teachers. Not once have we heard a genuine concern for our students. Along this line, a recent attempt to survey the parents of the district completely failed. As concerned parents and community members, we would like to know how many families received the recent survey regarding their preference for returning to in-person learning. What percentage of those that received the survey actually filled out the survey? Is that statistically significant to base a decision? Salinas Union High School District has over-communicated absences, tardies, final schedules, mental health awareness seminars via text, phone call, and email. Not once did I receive a text or a phone call regarding the survey. The original link that was sent via email was broken, making the survey inaccessible for those that tried to fill it out. How many of our Salinas Union High School District parents have email access or time to read through all of their emails? There was an apathetic approach to creating the COVID safety plan, making a decisive plan for returning to in-person learning and generally caring about all of our students. It is apparent that board members Tabera, Ocampo, and Rubio have either been backed by the teachers union or are afraid to upset them by making a bold decision to reopen, or they are following an agenda of their own. In-person learning is a right. By listening to parents that are saying a return to school will be too difficult due to messing up schedules, taking care of younger siblings, etc., you are bordering on breaking child labor laws. These high schoolers are still children and deserve to return to in-person learning for their future. Any member of this board making the decision not to return to in-person learning will have failed their job, will fail their community, and this community will work to recall you from your position. The CDC, American Board of Pediatrics, Dr. Fauci have all made statements that were backed by data and science that state returning to school is safe, and by continuing distance learning, we are causing long-term damage to our children. Fact, 20% of the US is still in distance learning. That means 80% have returned. We are only widening the achievement gap by continuing with this disastrous plan of virtual learning. The virus is not going away completely. It will never be 100% safe to return to school. Frankly, has never been 100% safe. We need to learn to live and learn in person with this virus. Please be the leaders that your community needs. Reopen Salinas Union High School District for all grades by April 6th. Concerned parent Jessica Tomei. Dear Salinas Union High School District Board, my name is William Thompson. I teach ceramics at Salinas High School. I know that distance learning has been difficult for everyone. I just want to say that I am proud of the work I have done this year as a ceramics teacher, and I am proud of the tremendous effort put forth by all of my colleagues. I talked to numerous people who asked with disbelief how I was going to teach ceramics over the computer. Thanks in large part to the school district supporting my class by making it possible to send each student a ceramics kit, I found that distance learning can be hands-on, engaging, and fun. I am proud of the work that my students have done this year. Each of them has essentially created their own ceramic studio in their homes this year, and I think they have done some amazing work. I posted a few pictures below, and I hope the person reading this will be able to present them on the screen or scroll through them. So I'm not able to do that for you, but I will send them to you via email so you can take a look at those. Superintendent Burns and board, I truly believe that a common ground can be found between the two populations, in-person learning versus distance learners. Having the distance learners out of the classroom will greatly assist in achieving the social distancing you will need in the classrooms. I like the idea of students having the option to stay home because that in itself will reduce the numbers of in-person students, helping to facilitate the 3-foot spacing social distancing in the classroom. It is a win-win. Possible solution. Those teachers who are unwilling to be vaccinated or are unwilling to come into school for in-person learning could then become the workforce dedicated to distance learning. These teachers who want to stay home would also have to be flexible in the subjects they are teaching and the grade that they are assigned to. I believe this might mean that they could be asked to change their subject or grade to accommodate their desire to stay home. I realize this would have to be done ASAP, so a decision by the board about returning to school would also have to be made ASAP. This arrangement may have to wait till the fall, but I strongly believe our kids need to have the option to come back into the classroom. Teachers should not be allowed to paralyze our entire educational system. They should not be able to have the kind of control that they are wielding through their unions. It is wrong, it is unethical. Educational pods are popping up everywhere, but they are expensive and they increase the equity divide. These educational pods have operated successfully and the kids are thriving academically. So why can't our schools do the same? I have worked in this pandemic environment since May of 2020. And prior to that, I worked in this environment since 1997. I came into the field of dentistry during the AIDS crisis, and I've come to accept that there are inherent risks of the job that I chose. Some dental hygienists during the pandemic have chosen not to come back to work, some because of fears or health complications, and some because they have school-age children that they now need to teach at home, since the educational system no longer fulfill that role for them. Nobody in my profession expects a signing bonus to come back into a clinical setting. No one in my profession expects their childcare to be covered by taxpayers. And not one of your teachers is nearly at risk as my colleagues are. I might add that in the field of dentistry, there has not been a single documented transmission between operator and patient or staff member to staff member. You might share share that one with your colleagues, because if anyone is going to be exposed to the virus, you would think it would be us. Thank you again for your time in reading my concerns. I look forward to seeing some urgency at the next meeting on March 18th. Warm regards, Holly Hebert. Dear Superintendent Burns and board members, I'm writing to you as a concerned classified member of our district. I'm worried about the decision to have students return to campus, not only for myself and my family, but also for my coworkers and students alike. I have some very major concerns and I feel they have fallen on deaf ears, and I would like to address them now. I hear in the media and news that because we are now in the red tier, that we are going to be opening gyms, restaurants, movie theaters, etc. at limited capacity. And my big question is, why are we ignoring the international news and data? Europe went into the red tier, opened things up too quickly, and that country is now dealing with a substantial rise in cases. I feel that we should be more cautious and wait just a bit longer to bring students back to campus, especially since bringing them back now does not guarantee that students return to a normal classroom setting. It will probably be distance learning just at the school in a classroom. I feel that the transition to in-person instruction this school year is being rushed and it is not fully thought out. I know that there is a monetary incentive from the state for the district, and while it claimed that it's not to be a deciding factor, I sense that it is a major driving force. Many people reference the fact that places like Disneyland will be opening in April, but it will be at a very limited capacity and quite honestly could be postponed. There's just no way to know for sure. Another concern that I have is bringing students back on campus does not include the requirement of the vaccine to be administered to students and staff. It's a personal decision, but that decision can affect everyone. Over and over, we hear that there are students who are struggling with distance learning, and we seldom hear about the students that are actually thriving in this new way of learning. I have seen firsthand so many students that were failing nearly all of their classes pre-COVID, but now with distance learning and all of the extra credit recovery programs that we have in place, those previously failing students are now back on track for graduation. That is amazing to see, and one of the few positives that I celebrate in this terrible situation. I am legitimately scared for the well-being of myself, but more for my husband, who is immunocompromised and is currently disabled dialysis patient. Any potential exposure that I go through, he will go through as well. And being that he is delicate in his health, I'm not confident that he would survive if he contracted COVID-19 as a result of me working. It seems that there is no choice, as I have already made an appeal to the district once to work from home full time, like the teachers are allowed to do, and it was denied. We continue to see frequent reporting of positive cases at our school sites and in our immediate surroundings. Monterey County is still reporting positive cases and unfortunately deaths as well. I am so frustrated that we seem to be listening more to opinions of frustrated parents rather than the facts from science and data. I know that it has been over a year since we went to the shelter in place, but it's imperative that we tread lightly since things can go easily swing the other way. In conclusion, I plead with all of you to move forward with caution and put safety of our community first before the gain of a few dollars. We are all just doing our best that we can with what we are given, and that is all we can do. Thank you for your time, Nicole Jimenez, employee. Hi, good afternoon. This is Lizbernalda Juarez. I'm a 14-year-old student from La Paz Middle School, and today I believe you guys will be discussing school opening. And I wanted to clarify that in my opinion, I truly believe that schools should open. And you may be wondering why, right? Well, this is because if the students have their teachers in front of them, it would help them be able to ask more questions and learn even more, because in online school, who wants to unmute themselves to ask something while everyone is quiet? Nobody, right? Well, also some students, like, for example, me, aren't lucky enough to have a big house with one room for each person. So there may be a lot of noises that can distract the student from doing their work. And being at school will avoid that because nobody else will be taking that but the teacher and themselves. So these are the two main reasons why school will be beneficial to students if it opens. This was Lizbernalda Juarez, and I thank you for the time to read my letter, and have a good rest of your day, everyone. Good morning, sir. I am a parent of a student attending Rancho San Juan High School and I'm writing to express my hope for the vote tonight to be in favor of allowing parents to have a choice to have our children return to in-person learning or remain in distance learning. We have been distance learning for over 1 year now. We can no longer allow the paralysis of those entrusted with the well-being of our children to continue to hold them hostage. There are many other school districts of greater size in our state that have already returned to some normalcy of in-person learning. I deeply appreciate the level of commitment that I've witnessed from my son's teachers and administration at Rancho San Juan. They were asked to turn on a dime, just as all of us were 1 year ago. They have risen to the occasion and provided the best experience possible during an impossible situation. It is time to get back to normal and allow our families the choice to return to school. Whether or not the child has excelled academically in this season does not paint a true picture of that child's overall well-being. I know that some have had a great experience in distant learning and still desire to return to school. I know that some have had a difficult experience and need to return to school. I know that some have had a great experience and want to remain in distance learning. Each family should be afforded the ability to choose what's best for their child in the current environment. Just as our teachers would like the choice, we as parents want the same choice. Many private schools, alternative education sources, and even public school districts have returned and are returning to in-person learning and are doing so successfully. Our schools should be allowed to do the same. I understand the fear that some teachers and staff have of the transmission of COVID-19. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we've been told, trust the science. If some are concerned about the transmission, please get the vaccine. The science that we've been told to trust and the science that we've been told is being followed should protect you. Thank you to all of you that took advantage of the vaccine clinics. I completely respect one's choice to not have the vaccine. They have chosen a field that does not put them at some risk of the transmission of any virus. Those who chose not to vaccinate and do not want to return to in-person learning should become the workforce that's designated for distance learning, understanding that they may have to change subjects or grade levels in order to accommodate their choice to not return to the classroom. The choice of some teachers and the unions wielding the unethical power should not continue to paralyze our entire district. Many essential frontline workers have been at work when there were so many unknowns, and they were not providing childcare options. They did not have the enhanced PPE that is available now, and many were forced to take a cut in pay. They did these things because that is their job and that is the job they were hired to do. As our district received more funding than any other district in the county in the form of COVID relief, those funds should have covered the expenses to provide adequate ventilation, which, as we heard, has already been done, PPE, and other safeguards to keep all of our teachers, staff, and students safe. We have been in this situation for a year now. A solid reopening plan should have been a topic of discussion at every board meeting so that it was inevitable to return to school when it was allowed. Our district would be prepared to advise where funds have been allocated and ultimately allow our kids to return to school with little hesitation. As you know, Rancho San Juan does not currently have a grade 12. The plan to allow 8th and 12th grade does not work for our school. Each school has a unique set of challenges and should have some say in decisions that will work best at each location. It comes down to choice. We all want the choice to decide what's best for our family, and I'm here to support my child, teachers, and administration. We cannot continue to have this divide. We are failing our children if we continue to delay these decisions. I appreciate the position you are in, and you are taking the time to read this. Respectfully, Jennifer McVeigh, parent. Dear Superintendent Burns and trustees, I acknowledge the incredibly difficult position our state legislators have placed you all in as we work diligently to open schools to all students who feel it is safe to return to in-person learning. We all continue to see daily data and up-to-date science that supports the safe reopening of our middle and high schools, yet you have felt handcuffed by the recommendations and regulations from the governor and the California Department of Public Health. Based on the recently issued restraining order against the state of California by the courts in San Diego, which appears to apply to all districts statewide, the plan you are voting for on tonight to open schools in the district for only certain students may fall short of complying with this injunction that is likely to apply statewide very soon. In the injunction, the state's attorney conceded that cohorts were recommended but never required. It found that the 2021 framework contained multiple instances of discrimination against the middle and high school students. as compared to elementary school students by not allowing in-person learning to secondary students. Further disparate impacts were created by the framework by establishing a required distance of 4 feet between students, which is difficult to achieve given the number of students in middle school and high school classes. The restraining order further found that the mental health effects resulting from or being exacerbated by remote learning, the disparate treatment, discrimination, being experienced by children affected by the framework is depriving those same children of the fundamental benefit of education. While this restraining order isn't yet a statutory requirement, it appears to be headed in that direction and quickly. Salinas Union High School District must begin now preparing to bring all students back to school safely as soon as possible so as not to be in violation of the final order. Sincerely concerned parent, Deborah Jessica. Trustees of the board and Superintendent Burns. Distance learning is leaving students behind. Academically, socially, and emotionally, students are struggling in the online environment. Advisory is not enough to address the serious mental health concerns raised by online school, and the current schedule is leading to significant learning loss, seeing as each class is now just half the number of days, and nowhere near the double amount of lecture hours. It's far more difficult to pay attention to a teacher on screen, and with classes moving more quickly to make up for lost learning time, students who are already struggling are falling back at especially high rates. We knew that distance learning would be less than ideal from the moment we left campus. What we didn't know was that the safe return to school would be such a low priority for the board. A plan for a safe return to campus should have been made and approved already. The day the county dipped into the red tier, a date that should have been set for a return to campus. In his message about reopening released early this week, Superintendent Burns said the board would be listening to the science about reopening. Well, here's the science. The CDC director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, says vaccinations are not essential to safely reopen schools. A study by Tulane University determined that when schools reopened in person or hybrid mode, we did not see an increase in hospitalizations post-reopening in communities with rates of hospitalization below 44 per 100,000 people. As of March 16th, the hospitalization rate in Monterey County was roughly 8 per 100,000. Researchers at UCSF agree that schools can reopen safely with proper protocols such as masking and distancing in place. The Journal of American Medical Association has reported on a variety of studies that show negligible student-to-student and student-to-staff transmission when schools are reopened. And these are just a few examples of the many, many studies, publications, and scientific bodies that assert reopening schools is safe, so as long as masking and distancing are enforced and other precautions are taken as necessary. Superintendent Burns also stated that the reopening plan would be made with the district's tenants in mind, including equity. School reopening is the only equitable option, seeing that it is the only way all students would have the opportunity to learn, free from Wi-Fi malfunctions and younger siblings who need to be cared for, and the countless other distractions students encounter at home. It's time to step up for students and provide them with a better chance at success. Schools across the Tri-County area are prepping to bring students back. There's no reason we shouldn't be preparing right along with them. The board claims that they want to make a decision based on facts, and the facts are clear. Schools can reopen safely. You were elected to serve students. We need to be back in the classroom for mental and academic success and achievement, for mental health and academic success and achievement. Listen to the science and reopen our schools. Sincerely, Catherine Beck, student. Dear Superintendent Burns and Board of Trustees, my name is Samantha Morales and I'm a freshman at Salinas High School. Considering it was my first year of high school, I was very excited to go to my first high school football game or my first homecoming, but that was all taken away due to COVID-19. I understand that COVID-19 poses a serious threat to our staff, but I'm very disappointed and outraged by how the board has handled the reopening plans and COVID-19 in general. Every day for the past year, I've witnessed my parents come and go from their essential jobs, and I've never heard them complain about going to work because their jobs put a roof over our heads and food on our table. I'm confused as to why it's okay for some to go to work, and now with case numbers low and vaccinations available, why I cannot return back to school. This year has left me feeling like I've lost a year of learning, and that I've fallen behind my peers. It is disappointing that 12 months later, it appears you have no plan, or your plan is to put the decision off until the fall. As a student, it's hard to see my classmates just giving up because they don't care anymore. We wake up every day, and it is the same thing every day. We sit in front of our computer for 5 hours and repeat the cycle 4 days a week. There is no socialization, just isolation. Finally, I don't expect you all to just open up the schools to everyone, but if you can let people play football, then you can figure out a way for our seniors to graduate in a safe, COVID-19 friendly way. They deserve it. I respectfully ask that you consider listening to the science and numbers instead of your emotions as you make this very important decision tonight. Thank you so much for your time, Samantha Morales. Dear Superintendent Burns and Salinas Union High School District Board of Trustees, I'm writing to discuss the science behind school reopening. I understand the emotion and fear that many feel, but the best way to alleviate fear is with the knowledge and science is knowledge. I am a physician at a local hospital and have cared for quite a few COVID-19 positive patients over the past year. So I understand firsthand the fear that some people hold. But throughout this past year of caring for patients, I have trusted the science of wearing a mask, washing my hands, and distancing when possible. This has kept me, my staff, and my patients safe, and it will keep the students, teachers, and staff in our schools safe. A recent article published in the journal Pediatrics, the study is out of Duke University. They compared school districts in North Carolina with in-person teaching and virtual learning. The study's author wrote, our cohort study demonstrated that enforcing SARS-CoV-2 mitigation policies, such as masking, physical distancing, and hand hygiene, resulted in minimal clusters of SARS-CoV-2 infection and low rates of secondary transmission in school, and did not cause a larger community infection burden. Schools can reopen safely if they develop and adhere to the specific SARS-CoV-2 prevention policies. The CDC update from February 12 science brief, transmission of SARS-CoV-2 in K-12 schools update states, based on the data available, in-person learning in schools has not been associated with substantial community transmission. Increase in case incidents among school-aged children and school reopening do not appear to predate increases in community transmission. It then goes on to state, though outbreaks do occur in school settings, multiple studies have shown that transmission within school settings is typically lower than, or at least similar to, levels of community transmission when mitigation strategies are in place in school. I understand teachers, staff, and students are afraid of the virus. The virus is new, and there has been so much conflicting information over the past year from non-scientific sources regarding the virus in particular. But let's put our fears to rest with science. Science and medicine have known for years that masks prevent the spread of disease. This is why I wear a mask in the operating room. It's not a new concept. Our influenza rates across the globe have been virtually non-existent this year, and the medical community knows it's because we are masking, social distancing, and staying home when we feel ill. Simple public health measures work. Implement these simple public health measures into the school to mitigate the spread of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID, and we can safely return to school. Our 3 hospitals have worked closely together over the past year to fight COVID, and over the past few months to actively vaccinate as many qualifying individuals as possible. Our community has worked hard to decrease our active cases and push us into the red tier. We have done our part. So why are you still debating if we go back to school? The board should be discussing when we go back in person, what it will look like. Our children need to go back to in person, not only for their academics, which have suffered significantly for so many this past year, but for the mental and social health as well. The data regarding increased mental health issues for school-aged children is well known to you all, I'm sure. There's no debate that the mental health of our youth has suffered immensely this past year. We know how to keep them safe physically with masking, hand washing, and social distancing, and we know how to help them emotionally, allowing them to return to some sense of normalcy, and that includes in-person learning. As a board, you have recognized the need for in-person interaction and have supported the return to varsity athletics, which I commend. Now let's take it to the classroom. Our academics are as important as our athletics. If you want to talk about equity, then academics affects all kids while athletics only affects some. Not every kid is a varsity athlete. Their mental and social well-being needs to be supported as much as the varsity athletes does. There's no reason to withhold in-person learning anymore. The science supports returning to school and the community spread is low. We have reached the red tier. We're allowing sports to play, let our teachers to teach in the classroom again, and our children to learn in a supportive environment. Rachel Beck. Dr. Rachel Beck. Just a few more. Dear Salinas Union High School District board members, this week's board meeting was frustrating to listen to. We have an obligation to provide our students with a rigorous education and online platform, and the online platform is not preparing them to be career and college ready. Students have become accustomed to laying in their beds in their pajamas most frequently, with little to no motivation to participate or engage in academic discussions. Why would they? They can hide behind their screens. My freshman Read 180 students, those that are at risk and reading below the 6th grade level, are still struggling, and their parents are exhausted as well. I just spoke to a mom who begged me to return to school because her son cannot learn this way. She began to explain her daily interactions with him. She was angry with him, but then began to sob because he has ADHD and cannot sit in front of a screen from 8:10 to 1:10 daily and focus. Our students deserve better. Listen to the science, they say. Per the CDC, research no longer supports keeping kids home doing remote learning. There's no longer any justification for keeping our keeps from in-person instruction. Vaccines are also not a requirement. Get one if you choose to do so. I did March 4th. Many of my colleagues did as well at Prime Care, CVS, and Natividad. If you are concerned about transmission, then choose to stay home. But so many are ready to return and eager to do so that they should be given that option. Another letter raised childcare concerns as one of our board members addressed that as a concern as well. That is not the district's obligation. It's the district's obligation to provide our students with the best possible education, and we are failing to do so if we continue in the distance learning platform. The rates of D's and F's is alarming. Some students are going to have to repeat a whole year of classes. I know this to be true of many of my freshman students. They are either not attending classes altogether or they are unable to access the curriculum in this online format. I am a parent and an educator in the Salinas Union High School District. My twin daughters are freshmen at Salinas High School. I also teach freshman reading intervention, Read 180, as well as ELD3, two of the most at-risk and vulnerable populations. I'm writing to you to express my concern and demand a safe reopening for in-person instruction as soon as possible. While my daughters have access to the internet and a quiet, supportive environment to complete their studies, my own students lack most of the above. They drop in and out of class, sometimes never to return. When they unmute to speak, as we should be speaking at least 50% of the time in ELD3, it is loud, children are screaming, the TV is blaring, or the music is playing. They live with many family members and are often assisting their younger siblings at the same time. Currently, we are finishing up LPAC testing that should have been completed at school in a standardized environment. It's been stressful, chaotic, and challenging to say the least. Our students deserve better. All of our students. I am more than willing to return to my classroom with my ELD3 students, regardless of their grade level. My 9th grade reading intervention students are withdrawn and do not want to participate. I've had numerous conversations with their parents about anxiety they have and the depression they are currently suffering. I do weekly check-in with my students and I call all parents when their students respond that they are in a dark place. I am more than willing to return to school with this class of 15 students. They need me and I need them. It is reported in Monterey County that the suicide prevention line has seen a 30% increase in students contemplating suicide. We cannot continue to ignore this. Our numbers are moving in the right direction and teachers are being vaccinated. I've had my first shot of Pfizer vaccine. The CD has stated that it is safe to return to school vaccinated or not, as long as distancing, hand washing, and masking are enforced. Once we entered the red tier, I'm requesting a return to in-person instruction. Our seniors should most definitely return, if not more, although I'm hearing that many would choose not to do so. Please approve a plan accordingly and let's start working together to make this happen for our kids. My daughters have missed out on much this year and as have all of our students. The difference is the support and interventions that I can offer them, as well as a stable, loving environment. Many of my students are not as fortunate. I've had to file 2 CPS reports this year, and this is a rarity. It is heartbreaking when your student messages you that they will be right back because they have to go and grab a bat because their stepfather is arguing with his mother. Thankfully, police were dispatched quickly. So many of our students are suffering. I've seen it firsthand as I delivered Halloween and Valentine's goodies to my ELD3 students. They are living in cramped homes, trailers, with poor internet connectivity and many people. The divide is only widening. What is the district's plans? When will our ELD students return to school? When will I be allowed to teach them in person? Is it the union holding us back or you? An MOU is not a legal agreement, but an understanding. I would return tomorrow. I'm imploring you to begin the fall, not as a hybrid schedule, but with a regular schedule. We should all be vaccinated by then. I will receive my second shot on March 26th. Let's do what is best for our students. They need in-person instruction desperately. Additionally, refer to the ruling made in San Diego yesterday, March 17th, that it encompasses all of California. And there's a link here which discusses the temporary restraining order and a ruling that prohibits 4 feet of spacing and reopening rules distinguishing elementary versus grade 7, 12, as well as prohibiting the definition of reopen for in-person instruction. Please allow students to return that wish to do so and those that want to remain in distance learning to do so. Concerned parent and educator, Kara Maestri. Good evening, Mr. Burns and Salinas Union High School District Board of Trustees. I would like to have my letter read at this meeting. I'd like to thank you all first for taking time to read my letter. I understand the need of our students returning back to a normal life as we would all love to, but in reality, Mother Nature threw us a curveball into which we were not prepared for. In the beginning of the pandemic, many of our classified continued working from home, and then at the site, once we were told to return. We had to change many ways of how we work to serve our students and parents, be it through emails and direct phone calls. CSEA worked diligently with the district on MOUs, memorandums of understanding, to ensure the safety of our members to return to work and conduct cohorts on our campuses. Many of us have lost loved ones, friends, and co-workers due to COVID, but we stand united to work with our district to ensure the safety of our students and classified staff. We may not be the teachers to our students, but we are involved in their education too. So it is very important to us, prior to them returning to our sites, that we have all MOUs completed. Salinas Union High School District staff have recently got vaccinated, but we have yet to receive our second dose, and that will not happen until April. So we most definitely need our MOU reopening of schools addendum to September of 2021 to be completed so we can return safely and best serve our students and family. So we ask that you table tonight's decision until we finalize our MOU for reopening of schools in order to protect our members. We are not saying we don't want students back on campus. We just want to make sure we cover all our bases for them. Thank you, CSEA First Vice President Maria Villafongo. There's a couple more. Hello, Superintendent Burns and board members. As a student, I'm concerned about the plan regarding reopening schools. I believe there has not been enough student engagement to determine whether students would be willing to go back to school, considering the fact that it will be students attending school if they were to reopen. For the most part, I've been seeing that the district's main target audience for engagement has been parents. And even then, not all parents have been voicing their opinions on the reopening of schools. I believe that is due to the lack of transparency that the board has had regarding their thoughts and plans for school reopenings. There are still many questions that I believe have been left unanswered and are crucial for parents and students to understand before they start making decisions on whether they're willing to attend school in person. For example, what kind of disciplinary actions will be taken towards students who choose to not follow guidelines and pose a threat of health to students and staff? Or how will situations be handled where students don't want to attend in-person school, but don't want to attend El Puente either due to limited non-rigorous coursework that's offered at El Puente? I don't feel safe enough to go back to school at the moment. considering that not everyone has taken the vaccine, due to the fact that the vaccine is only available to teens of 16 years and older, which is only half or less of a school's population. I also feel like going back to school in April is a bit too soon to be able to fully prepare and take all the precautions, and at the same time, it's too late to be an effective return to school, considering the fact that we only have 2 months left to school. These 2 months could instead be used to better educate the community on what coming back to school will look like, answer all of their questions, and prepare teachers and students alike for the upcoming school year. All I ask from you, Superintendent Burns and board members, is to take my opinion and overall health into consideration when finalizing your decision. Respectfully, Karen Durante, student. Dear Superintendent Burns and Board of Trustees, why were schools closed in 2020? If I recall correctly, two main reasons were the thought that kids would be the primary source of COVID and that schools would be super spreaders. It has now been shown through science and data that this was wrong. You have all been given the presentation by the UCSF Dr. Janine Noble. She provides accurate, real data, and let's talk about one slide. 11 COVID deaths versus 16 influenza deaths among children under 18 years of age in California. And in 2017, 225 deaths by suicide, same age group. We have never closed schools for influenza or due to the unimaginable deaths by suicides. Yet we sit with our schools closed to in-person instruction a year later. Trustees, I ask you why? Fear? Waiting for 100% safety? Vaccines? Hands tied. Fear. While I can empathize and feel sad for those living in extreme fear, if you follow the data and a few minor mitigation strategies, such as masking and reasonable distancing, 3 feet, it has proven to be very safe. Waiting for 100% safety. Schools and our community have never been 100% safe and never will be. A family can choose in-person education just the same as an employee can choose to stay or leave in an occupation. From previous meetings, it's clear that our district has been working on going above and beyond to provide a safe environment. Great job. Vaccines. I am in a top exposure field, and along with many other essential workers, we have been safely working without a vaccine through the highest community levels. However, the great news is educators have been given the opportunity to be vaccinated. Hands tied. I've heard this in a reference to reopening guidelines. These guidelines have been confusing and a big hurdle for anyone in California. You've heard the great news regarding the lawsuit in San Diego against California. It was clarified by one of the lawyers in a Facebook Live last night that the 6 feet distancing was never meant to be used as a strict guideline, and 4 feet distancing currently cannot be mandated. Also, the CDHP has backed off the idea of cohorts or stable groups. Why is this great news? 3 feet and kids changing classes has proven safe. Our students are already only taking 3 classes, so there is no reason that students should not be allowed to return to campus, wear a mask, and move class to class. As a parent, I hope to see this board in our district up to date on quickly changing guidelines, which prove that minimal safety measures, primarily masks and small amount of distance, we should be planning towards 5 days a week in-person instruction with a live teacher in class. Anything less is unacceptable. Thank you for your attention, Leslie Hall. Dear Superintendent and board members, I'm writing this letter because I don't feel that now is the right time to open our schools. While I agree that a return to normalcy is what we all want and wish for, opening now will not make these wishes come true. We need to take our students and staff into account and not just the financial benefit of returning to the school year. What kind of services will be provided to students and staff returning to campus after struggling with a prolonged traumatic event that has lasted over a year? A traumatic event that students and staff are still having to live through as people still are becoming ill and still dying from this horrible virus. Our district has unfortunately experienced loss even on our campuses. I feel if we spend more time preparing our staff and students for returning to a hybrid, which has been proposed, we can better ensure a successful transition following this traumatic year-end events. There are many students in our district as well as our staff that have adapted to distance learning And now we're asking them to quickly transition over to a hybrid model for the remainder of the school year during a time when they need stability. If we provide training for our staff and services for our students to transition from online learning, we can help ensure our students' success in any endeavors that they may pursue. Crisis intervention, coping skills, and protocols are needed for students to be successfully transitioned back to in-person instruction. A rushed approach for the sake of incentives is not in the best interest of our students and their mental well-being. Respectfully, Antonio Sanchez. So those are all the letters I have. I received some after the fact. I'll reach out to those people as well. That's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burns. And now we'll move to action items. Reopening of schools plan, Mr. Burns.
Very good. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Great. All right, let's see. All right. So as we get going through this PowerPoint, just some reminders, and most of this information is from previous board meetings pulled together. So the new information might be related to the metrics that are out and some data that's out, as well as the proposal moving forward. So I want to remind the board that back in June, the governor signed into law SB 98, Senate Bill 98, and that defined the school funding mechanisms for this school year. Embedded in that was also the legislative desire for us to have more in-person learning as much as possible, but it also granted the local education agency, school board, the continued authority to decide what model of instructional delivery based on your local indicators, which at that time meant you could decide to remain in distance learning in August of 2020, or you could move to a variation of models that included hybrids or other in-person learning, again, based on your local context and what was in the best interest of students, family, staff, and the community needs. So that's just a reminder of SB 98. Here's our current data as of 3/16. So we moved down into the red tier, which is a great accomplishment for our community. Regardless of our conversations about schooling, it's great for our community to be moving in the right direction. So we were on Tuesday at 4.7 new cases per day per 100,000 residents. You can see how close we were to the orange tier. So to move down to the next level would be 3.9. We were at a 2% positivity rate, which is a 7-day average. We were already in the orange tier for that level. So it's anything below 4.9. And then our health equity quartile was at 3.4, which was below the orange tier as well. So those are really good pieces of data for our community, and the reason why we're having this discussion about potential to bring kids back onto campus. I also wanted to point out to you though that 6 weeks ago, just 6 weeks ago, we were in deep purple. That was a new term through our worst part of this virus. And 6 weeks ago, we were at 52 new cases per 100,000, a 13.3% positivity rate, and a 19.3% health equity quartile. So that's just 6 weeks ago. So you can see how our data has changed in such a dramatic way in a short amount of time. This is our current, some of you wanted to take a look at active cases. So, and by zip code. So a week ago, you can see Salinas had 91 cases, and they're broken down by zip codes there. And then this week, I'm gonna move my screen so I can see the data too. This week, you can see how that's changed, right? So 93901 went down pretty dramatically. 93905 went down. 93906 went down. 93908 went up. And the other zip codes are smaller populations in unincorporated areas of Salinas. And so you can see, but overall for Salinas, we had a decrease in 40, roughly 40 or so over the week, right? And those are active cases within the city. So these are some considerations from the California Department of Public Health. These are in their guidelines for schools. But they want us to focus on criteria and processes that still fall under the blueprint for a safer economy, which is the colored tiered system. The considerations are intended to help us prepare to resume in-person instruction, which includes steps to take when a student or staff member is found to have been exposed or as having COVID-19 symptoms during the school day or while participating in before or after school programs. These guidelines are also a response. We have to have a response in place for any confirmed infections, right, of a student or staff member, and we need to identify any types of clusters or outbreaks and how those are being investigated. And they also have considerations for physical distancing in classrooms and the implementation of stable cohorts of groups of students. So you've heard some of the public comment about a recent court case and a temporary injunction out of San Diego County. And so that's being watched and monitored at this point to see where that will take some of this discussion. But it is a temporary restraining order from the state imposing those restrictions, but it is not a permanent solution at this point, or a permanent injunction, I should say, at this point. And so our legal counsel will be reviewing that and giving us some guidance moving forward. It does not remove your authority as a local education agency from continuing to offer an instructional model in distance learning or to have an approach to returning to school as you see fit based on the local context. You still have that local decision-making authority. In terms of the colored tier guidance for schools, so as you've heard, schools are eligible to return in the red, orange, and yellow tiers. It's not a mandate or a requirement, but you are eligible. If you do so, you have to adhere to the sector guidelines for schools. And we must approve a COVID safety plan, which you approved at your last meeting. Also within the colored tier model of the blueprint for the safer economy, within the purple tier, we've talked about this previously. So the younger elementary school students could return in the purple level if your cases were below 25 per 100,000. But in the purple tier, high school and middle schools could not return, which is also one of the impetus of the lawsuit in San Diego, which now is a moot point because we're all in the red tier. And so you're now eligible to reopen. So again, in red, you're eligible to reopen. You have 3 weeks to make a decision on whether or not you want to reopen. If you decide that you're going to reopen in some type of format during those 3 weeks, we will go through the processes to let the county health department know. That way, if for some reason there's a spike back up in cases to purple, we would be what they call grandfathered in under the planning under the red tier. So we need to do all of the planning. If you make that decision to move forward, it needs to be done in these 3 weeks. You don't have to reopen within these 3 weeks, but you need to do the planning and let the health department know. Some additional considerations is that transitioning back to reopening should include options for those wanting to remain in distance learning. Schools should implement a thoughtful phased-in approach to include shifting to a hybrid model of distance learning and in-person instruction, and that school districts should look at gradually bringing in students by grade level or percentages of grade levels, and then gradually increasing numbers of students in person over time. So really the guidelines are meant to be a way for you to phase in, bringing students back on campus versus trying to bring in 2,500 kids all at once for 5 days a week, which would be more than just a difficult proposition. So some of what you've heard in the public comments are also strategies that are recommended by both the CDC and the California Department of Public Health. These are the mitigation strategies they consider most effective at reducing exposure if you are to reopen. So one is wearing an appropriate face covering, not just a face covering, but an appropriate face covering. Having physical distancing, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. Having good hand hygiene practices, which we have worked through our physical plant to make sure that those things will be readily available for students. Looking at environmental modifications, having stable groups, which is part of that conversation that you've heard about that the state is now going to be looking into. Having adequate ventilation, and then having a process for COVID testing of staff and students. And then I missed one of those steps, symptom and contact tracing as well. So these are all the strategies that are most effective at reducing the exposure of transmission. I will tell you that the majority of these we have in place, ready for students to return to school. There are some considerations about the size of our classrooms and the size of groups, et cetera. So stable cohorting is the CDC's recommendation is to have a strategy that reduces or has groupings of students. I have my screen in front of everything here. The recommendation is to have groups of students, which will keep them together all day and limit mixing of students from other groups. That's being challenged right now, but at the same time, it's a current recommendation or consideration. Why do they have that as a recommendation? It reduces potential for outbreaks through mixing of students, supports contact tracing to contain any infections. But for us, it creates logistical issues when students have 3 different classes and there's no way to rotate all of the teachers to those students because of their variants. There's no way to rotate the teachers to students all day long. So it creates some logistical problems. April 19th, the reason that we had that in there previously as a consideration is that starts the last quarter of the classes the kids are taking, and thus changing, if we try to change anything too dramatically to meet some of these requirements of the CDC and the California Department of Public Health, it would actually cause a major disruption that could affect students' course completion, which would be very detrimental to what they've already done for the entire school year. So in terms of physical distancing, so the current recommendation is 6 feet between students, right? With that as a guideline, our current analysis of our classrooms, most classrooms would support roughly 16 students. If we move down to 4 feet, if 6 feet is not practical, most of our classrooms would support 20 students. So there are some that would ask you to throw all of that out because there's no science or data that proves either one of those are effective. However, the CDC has today moved towards the direction of recommending 3 feet of distance. And so even with 3 feet of distance as a recommendation, that does not allow all students to be in the classroom at the same time. We do have some of our buildings that are older where the classroom spaces are much smaller as well. So these are considerations we will continue to have as we plan ahead. We also have that mindset to keep 6 feet of distancing throughout the campus, just as a general rule of thumb. So March 4th, we had a special board meeting and we talked about some concepts. At that meeting, we used the data of our local COVID-19 metrics, and at that time demonstrated that there was a shift in data dramatically in a really positive direction. So in anticipation of moving down to a less restrictive tier, we talked about the language that was in the new bill, SB AB 86, which included language about secondary school districts moving at least into an opportunity to offer in-person classes for 1 grade level at middle school and 1 grade level at high school. Our discussion at that time was 8th grade at the middle school and 12th grade at the high school. We also talked about keeping our students in those stable cohorts would be a challenge, right? So the concept we discussed at that time was bringing kids back voluntarily having them start in period 2, which is the first part of their day, having them take that class in person with the teacher on an A day, B day hybrid configuration, and then having the kids remain there the rest of the day while they did their online classes. The feedback on that was not good. Was not good from students who reached out. It was not good from teachers who reached out, and there was a lot of complications with that, and parents that reached out as well didn't think that having their child sit in the classroom for 6 hours and not move around was their idea of returning to in-person instruction. So we have been getting stakeholder feedback, and of that feedback, approximately half of our parents have responded that they want their students to come back to school, that they are ready for their kids to come back to in-person learning. And about half of them have said they would rather stay in distance learning. And so that's pretty much on path with other surveys we've done previously as well, where we know that a lot of our families want to continue in distance learning, but a lot of our families also want an option, right? An option of some kind. Our labor partner for our certificated staff, they have been collaborating with us and are negotiating the impacts, of any return to in-person, which would take place in April. We're having those same discussions with our classified labor partner as well on what those impacts would be. I did meet with a group of students this week. I was probably one of the best parts of my week, dialoguing with students and hearing what their concerns are from them directly. And rightfully so, they're concerned about their health and safety in classrooms. They're concerned about their health and safety on buses. They want to make sure if they go back to school in person, that they won't bring something home to their family members. And those are all legitimate conversation points and needs for our planning and needs for our communication plan to develop further. But the students I did meet with also indicated that they're concerned about returning in April. Hopefully there will be a choice for them to remain in distance learning, but most of them indicated that they would be ready to come back to school in person in August, and they would hope that that opportunity for them is available to return in August.
Mr. Burns, could you please tell us what parts of town these students were from?
These were high school students from every high school. So there were 3, 4, 5 students from each high school assembled through Building Healthy Communities. And it was a very productive conversation to get the input. And I will continue to roll that out in different layers as well through other student groups. I do want to let you know that our neighboring school districts are addressing very similar concepts. Those with high school students are looking at models of choice, not returning to full, complete school in person, but having some type of choice, whether that be on a daily or every other day cycle with an hour or 2 a day, somehow of in-person instruction as an option. There is a potential to offer a structured schedule for all students, for them to remain in distance learning in the mornings, but then to have an option to attend in-person opportunities in the afternoon. So we have evolved from that first conversation about coming to second period and staying all day to having some choice. In terms of vaccine availability, March 3rd was the first day that educators could have access to the vaccine. We have been coordinating with the Monterey County Office of Education as well as pharmacies and working with our neighboring districts. In just 2 weeks of time, we've offered over 1,700 vaccine appointments, which is phenomenal. A great number considering that the third week of March or so, or third week of February, towards the end of February, we were told there was only about 4,000 to 6,000 doses of the vaccine coming into the county. And so we know that that has ramped up dramatically, not just for our teachers and educators and support staff, but for all of our communities. So that's outstanding to see. Approximately 80% of our staff have noted on our recent surveys that they will be getting the vaccine. It is a personal choice. It is not a requirement of their jobs. So at 80% is a really good number. Again, by the end of this week, we believe everybody will have been contacted and offered a possible appointment. I've had 2 clinics that I've been signing people up for this week. I'm having hard times filling spots for educators. So we've been inviting our partners, the partners that work with our children, such as Harmony at Home, and some of our service providers. And we've also extended this to our volunteer coaches who are working with our athletes as well. Again, vaccines are just another layer of defense in controlling the spread of the virus, and will probably be a game changer for us. If not now, definitely for August. Some ongoing challenges. So the CDC is evaluating physical distancing recommendations. You've heard that. They've also made some updates to guidance as more research is known about mitigation strategies and how those are aligned with their school guidance. So we should expect more of those updates ongoing. I am happy to hear that they came out with some new guidance for outdoor concerts and sporting events. And that will also include the potential for us to have outdoor in-person graduation ceremonies. So that will be an exciting thing for our families, specifically for our seniors, to have something to look forward to with the potential for an in-person graduation ceremony. So really you have 2 things that you can look at tonight. So one is we can stay in our status quo for the remainder of the school year, right? So that status quo means distance learning. We have some small cohorts that are meeting on campus. We could increase small cohorts to include other academic support for students. The AB 86 and other bills really refer to the students that are most vulnerable, trying to get them on campus, including low-income students, English learners, foster youth, and homeless students. We could also add in-person services to support mental health of students. Even in our current model, we could scale that up. The second recommendation is that we have a phased-in school reopening, and we focus on grades 8 and 12 beginning on April 19th. And the idea is to continue, and this is similar to other high schools around us, continue with distance learning in the morning, which keeps structure for all students to finish the school year, and add an in-person after lunch program as a voluntary enrollment to provide enrichment opportunities with our certificated staff, teachers, et cetera, with a focus on re-engagement, socialization, academic support, academic enrichment, and then mental health, emotional support with some academic alignment. So giving students that opportunity to come in person and get something a little bit more and a little bit different than one of the classes they are already taking. So what would that potentially look like? And then we'll go back to that discussion and, as a board. This is a sample possible middle school program. I don't have the bell schedules on there yet. We're still working that component out. I will tell you that we had a hybrid model ready to go for August of 2020, but the data at the time didn't provide us that luxury to go back to school in person. We've had multiple different groups looking and working on schedules throughout the entire year. And so having a quick pivot like this is really taking things we already have in place and making some adjustments to them and not starting from scratch. So an in-person middle school sample model might look like Mondays would be all asynchronous like it is already. And Tuesday, cohort A, right? So kids would sign up voluntarily to come in for in-person instruction. And on Tuesday, Wednesday, they would come for their in-person instruction. And that would be after lunch, right? And the teachers would also connect with them through opportunities they provide. And so they would have, give or take 90 minutes of time in the afternoons, twice a week. And then on Thursday, Friday, cohort B would come in the afternoons with that same teacher. So one teacher would have 2 groups split in half, and they would come 2 days a week voluntarily. So those students that don't want to opt into an in-person opportunity would still have opportunities in the afternoon to connect with staff on to get intervention and academic support, and work with their counselors on support that they might need. That's a sample middle school, sample high school, very similar, right? So after lunch, the students would have the opportunity to come into campus, again, have that in-person session with the teacher, focused on those areas that I talked about previously. Again, about 90 minutes or so, twice a week in this type of format. So these are the kinds of things that would happen in that 90-minute in-person session. Students could have academic support. So if a teacher identifies some students that need to meet to get academic support, so maybe my ELD3 students need that support, so they would be invited in as part of that afternoon session. It could also be about school connections or exploratory electives. So we also talked about giving teachers a little bit of flexibility to come up with something a little different, but still within the context of their academic preparation. So if I teach English to 11th graders or 12th graders in this case, I could also offer a poetry class, or I could do a creative writing class. We also talked about embedding a lot of social emotional wellness types of work within that context of that period of time, because we know when students return, they're going to be bringing with them a different set of experiences than they normally would bring. And so part of them coming back to school is giving them time to get re-engaged and re-socialized with school, as well as giving the adults that same opportunity to re-engage and re-socialize with students in person at the same time. So again, the students would opt into this enrichment program. It will not be a requirement. Teachers would design these types of courses or provide intervention support for students to support learning loss. But students would also get some opportunity to select these offerings, again, with a priority on seniors starting there, and then potentially scaling up if we have more staff that want to participate in this as well. So I will stop there. The last few slides are the CARES Act budgets, and we can go into those later, or I can actually bring those in for more in-depth conversation on Tuesday night at the regular board meeting. We currently have spent all but about 230,000 or so of the dollars allocated that needed to be spent before the end of this fiscal year. We recently were, I guess you call it awarded, an additional $30+ million. And so these last two boxes on here, the elementary and secondary school emergency relief 2 and 3, these are new infusions of dollars from the state to focus on learning loss. And they have expenditure deadlines by, in the first one there, September 30th of 2023, and then the 30 million there by September 30th of 2024. So because these were both just new allocations, we will reassemble our budget committee to go and apply those and put concepts and ideas together to focus on reducing learning loss for our students over the next several years. So I will stop there and take questions. You're on mute, President Taber.
Would you mind, Mr. Burns, going back 2 slides to show us the two options that the board has in front of them? I think it's 2 slides. Yeah, right. Okay. Let's have some discussion. Anybody have questions or concerns of Mr. Burns?
So you have Trustee
sir.
Rubio has his hand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I just, this may belabor some of the stuff you've said, so but it just so, you know, some of the people understand, I get the feeling that a lot of people just think we can just open up the school, right? Open up the school just like that and bring everybody in And there's I don't know. And I saw the stuff you talked about, the 4 feet, the 6 feet. Some of the people have seemed to have thrown that out the window also. I get it, by the way. I mean, I get this, but it seems like that's not clear to some of the people. And the logistics of bringing so many people to school, just if you were to turn it on, 15,000, 16,000, whatever the amount of kids we have. And we seem to have two choices here. And I know you've gone a lot over this. Could you just inform the public of some of the issues involved here? I don't know, I'm trying to be as kind to you, on having to regurgitate all this stuff, because I know you put a lot of work into it. I'm extremely thankful for everybody that's done everything, but that's the feeling that I get from these letters, as though people just want this thing turned on just like that, and as though we're preventing this from happening. And can you address that? I mean, at least give some of the people some some of the challenges that we're facing, and more you and the staff, because I'm not there every day, and I feel for all of you, as well as the students and the parents. But can you just explain a little bit? I mean, just the challenges of bringing people in, some examples, something you could do out there for, please.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So
Yeah.
I will say first and foremost, the terminology reopening schools does
Right.
not equate to going back in time. So we cannot flip a switch and start again as we were on March 10th of last year, right? So we know a lot, we've learned a lot about science, and I believe we can start the process of slowly moving back into school, right, in an incremental fashion that's done safely. So we can't just go back and say, let's put 2,200 students at North Salinas High School in person. We can say if we offer that, not everybody would go back. And so the numbers would definitely be less. However, you still, if you're going to flip the switch completely on, you have to offer it to everybody. So you have to plan for that worst case scenario. And in this case, that's not a negative, right? That doesn't bring about a negative connotation. It just means, how do you bring in 2,200 students into one entry, one exit every day? How do you get them onto buses, right? Large percentage of our students go by bus, right? And the reason I put the data in that showed you where we were 6 weeks ago is 6 weeks ago, I would have recommended to the board, we stay in distance learning, not even have an option, because the data was that bad, right? It was that bad. And there was no vaccine. It wasn't, I mean, it was out there in the community, but there wasn't a potential for teachers and staff to get vaccinated. We are today at a place where I think incrementally our schools can create the logistics to implement this proposal, right? To implement this proposal to get our students back onto campus that want to come back in for 90 minutes a day for a couple days a week, right? Which is similar to 85% of the schools in around us or more. And I'm not comparing us with elementary schools. It's a different conversation. They're doing phenomenal work as well, but it's a different conversation. And I think we can do it safely. And it's based on what we have in place ready to go. I will tell you that the phased in approach to me makes sense, because it can start with a grade level. It can then move up to a strategic process to bring in kids that need academic support, more academic support than what they'll normally get in distance learning. And will also then lend us a lot of localized experience of what needs to be in place for August. Because I really think the goal for August is more comprehensive in school for as many, if not all, kids. So logistics are challenging. We have some phenomenal brain power, both in staff and in parents who have wanted to sit down and contribute to this conversation. There's, I mean, phenomenal brain power. And most have said, with the guidelines that you have held above you, it's going to make it very difficult. And we know that some of that's changing, but right now the guidelines are there. And so, the challenge really is you haven't had anybody in the buildings. We took a step in February. Now you have an average of 25 to 40 kids in the buildings. Now we might get 400 if we implement this type of proposal. And now maybe 400 grows into 600 when we get strategic, and summer school becomes bigger than that as well. So incrementally, I think we need to go back in person versus trying to flip the switch and get everybody back all at the same time.
Right.
I have one follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
And is there a model that you have? Because what I'm looking at is incrementally kids may start coming back. Then you may have kids that want to maintain distance learning if this thing stays right at the red, or you know, and if they have that choice, is there a point where we won't have enough teachers to do both? You know,
It's a
do you
really-
have a model? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good question. We do have a model that we're working on. Dr. Baltazar Sabah, our labor partners, we've been talking about how do we offer in the fall some type of distance learning approach for those that still have maybe medical challenges or some real reasons why to stay in distance learning. Now, we've sent out a survey to parents asking about who would be interested in that model. It seems to be the feedback I'm getting from parents is they weren't quite understanding what that was for. So we'll have to reword it, send it out again, and get that feedback. This is the time of year when we start building our staff for each of our school sites for next year. So we're trying to get that data now so we can align teachers with those students and have a virtual school, if you would, and not necessarily a virtual setting in each of your classrooms. So for instance, if Mr. Felice was, currently he's teaching PE and it's distance learning, right? Next year, we're not saying that Mr. Felice would teach in-person PE and also have a Chromebook or some type of technology following him all day so kids can be in that class at the same time. What we're saying is it needs to be in a virtual setting completely so that teachers can be effective instructors all day with a group of kids in front of them, and then another teacher can provide 100% attention to the virtual students through that protocol as well. So we'll bring you more of those models as we start to get that data back. We're also collecting data on, you know, the potential of the number of teachers that may, for their needs as well, might fit that type of learning modality. And it might not be a medical situation. It might be a teacher just feels they're really phenomenal at delivering in that mode, and they want to continue to deliver in that mode. I mean, I know a few of them who would like to continue in that, and I know many more who are saying never again, right? So it's been challenging, but you know, each person has their own experience to draw on. So yeah, we're building out models, Trustee Rubio, for us to be able to offer both of those things in the fall.
And President Tabera, I've got just two more questions, if I can go, if you're okay with that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So the second to last question, I may have more, but at this point, regarding the survey, how many people were surveyed and how many responded out of that survey about the 50-50 one that you presented earlier?
Yeah. Dr. Baltazar Sabah, do you have that data, or maybe
numbers?
Marcos Cabrera?
Marcos has that data.
Yes, we received over 1,000 responses to the survey.
And I'm going to ask you just a little bit more of 1,000. And were they balanced through all the schools, or just some schools give more? I mean, we have all the schools. That's 1,000. That's, well, I don't go into averages on that, but any idea on that? Any ideas?
It wasn't concentrated in any one particular school.
Yeah.
I did not do any sort of breakout though, so I can't say definitively what the averages were right now.
But you could pull that and put it in a report for the board?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see that where the responses came from. And the last question I have at this point, and I'll give the floor to somebody else, is regarding the lawsuit in San Diego. You know, I saw a little bit about it, but what's the impact on us?
Yeah, so I believe the case is going to be heard the last day of the month, first day of April, somewhere in there. But the impact could be a potential to not have to implement the guidelines that the state has for stable cohorts, right? So that would change whether you make a decision on that for April or for August. That could lead to us saying that kids can change from classroom to classroom and intermix with students from different classes. So right now, the stable cohorts basically says you as 15 kids have to stay together all day. And so that would change that to say you don't. You could mix with the next group of 15, you could mix with the next group of 15. The other component of the lawsuit says that 6 feet there is no scientific difference between 6 feet and 3 feet. So, which means if you have the space, you wouldn't need to have an A group and a B group. They could all go at the same time. Now, not all classrooms have that kind of space, but conceivably what those guideline changes may lead to is all kids back to school at the same time, 5 days a week. Conceivably.
Yeah, no, I understand. I've just been through the hallways of every school during the breaks.
Yeah.
And for people that are listening out there, it's incredible the amount of people that are just walking through these hallways during the breaks when they get out of school. Oh, it's something else. It's just mind-boggling. So, okay, thank you. That's all I have at this point, and maybe I'll something else. Thank you, President. Thank you.
sir.
Thank everybody for their hard work. It's a lot of work, and thank you. And I hope everybody that's listening to this, you know, thank you for the letters. And if you have some questions, please send them to me so I can send them forward. But thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Trustee Jones.
Thank you, President Tabera. Several questions, and I apologize if they aren't in a sensical order. I'd like to start, though, with a follow-up to Trustee Rubio's question about the survey. So we have 16,500 students and we got 1,000 responses. So that's I know depending on the survey that might seem like a decent number, but considering the magnitude of this, I sure would love to see a much better number, a much greater number, because I'm not sure that we can confidently say that the 50-50 split is going to transfer to the other 15,500 students, right? Were parents surveyed or students?
Go ahead, Marcus.
For the survey that was submitted prior to last week's board meeting, that was strictly for parents.
So I would really love to see us ask our students as well as their parents. I don't know how difficult that is. I know other high schools have done that. Most of our students are high school students. Some of them are legal adults. It would be really great to hear from them. And I think once a model is chosen, I think it would be important for students and parents to know what it is that they're signing up for, right? So like you said, Mr. Burns, reopening to some people you just kind of think it's like normal. But then there's other reopening ideas that may be a total turnoff. So I know we've all been surveyed to death this year. I can testify to that, but I really think we need to carefully target and craft those surveys so that we're reaching all of our constituents and that they know exactly what it is that they're being asked to, what their options are.
Yeah,
So,
I think part of it, I agree with you. And I think part of it is surveyed out. We,
totally.
one of the last surveys we sent out, 5,000 people responded. So,
Right.
this seems to be a bigger decision-making point, and the response is a little different. So
Right.
we definitely can get some additional feedback on both. And I apologize, in the PowerPoint, the last slide was next steps, and I forgot to show you that slide. And the next steps really is about getting that data back
Mhm.
from both teachers and parents and students on how many people we're even talking about that would volunteer to come back.
Right, because I know at another high school, for example, there were actually 2 reopening models, and the students and parents were actually surveyed on which model they would prefer. And interestingly, it was a 50-50 split, and distance only was not an option, right? So we all know, depending on how you craft the survey, you're going to get different results. So okay, let me back up. I just want to clarify something. This is so complicated and it's ever changing. And so I want to, I just feel the need to say this again. Students have the choice, assuming we approve a reopening plan, right? Students have the choice to remain in distance learning for the rest of this school year. And that's not just because we're giving them that choice. I believe that's the current law. Like we actually have to give students that option, at least for this school year, if we change or offer another option, right? So I'm hearing letters from families concerned about coming back, and I just want to I feel the need to just state overtly that you don't have to come back, right? If you don't want to. This decision would be an opportunity for students and their families who want to return to an in-person model. So I know that's rhetorical, and I know it's been said over and over again, but again, some of these letters don't seem to reflect that awareness. So I don't know if anybody else in the room knows, can answer these questions, but I know a little bit about what our local high schools are doing. I know that Carmel and Monterey are offering a very similar model, distance learning academic in the morning, and then more of an enrichment intervention, social emotional wellness opportunities in the afternoon. I know that PG is offering something a little bit more academic, but it ends up being an hour a week. Like each student, I guess, gets an hour a week with their teacher, and I'm not as familiar with that model, so unfortunately, I can't speak any more to that. I also know that PG, I think actually most schools are starting April-ish, early to mid-April. After April 19th, it's not going to make sense. We all know that. Anybody know what any of the other high schools are doing? Like maybe in South County?
Yeah, I haven't heard back from my colleagues in Gonzales or King City, Greenfield. I know that everybody's in the same mindset that not all students will return and that there needs to be an option for them to return. So our model is very much aligned with Carmel and Monterey Peninsula
Right.
schools, where there's an option for those who want to opt in. And again, the mindset is really, providing some additional support and additional re-socialization, re-engagement opportunities for kids, which they really do need right now. And so I can't quote what Gonzales is doing. I know there was talk about a focus on 12th grade, but that could have changed since the last time I've heard. But they're all similar conversations of not everybody just immediately flipping a switch and going to some type of full hybrid model because students are already have a structure in place. So how can you blend a structure they have with adding something to it to give them more?
Right. So I have a couple of specific questions about the model, but before I go there, I definitely agree and support the notion that our seniors should be our top priority for obvious reasons. I don't think anybody would argue that. But I just focusing on 2 grade levels, it just feels really discriminatory to me, especially if what we're offering is this afternoon piece that is, you know, all of the students will do their academics in the morning, right? You certainly could have an academic enrichment opportunity, maybe with an AP teacher, or an academic intervention opportunity, maybe with an ELD teacher. So I'm not suggesting that none of the classes offered in person would be academic, but I also know that there might be some, again, some social, kind of more fun, maybe basketball, even if we can go there, right, with the new sports guidelines. So I just would really, I know, you know, we're running out of time here and we have to make a decision, but I just feel the need to say that I would really love this opportunity to be available for any student in any grade level who wants it. Again, we don't know what those numbers are, and that would certainly determine whether it's even viable, right? So couple last questions. Advisory on Tuesday through Friday, I saw that on the schedule. Is that going to be mandated for in-person students? Because my understanding for advisory, it was created to meet the requirement for a live check-in on asynchronous days. Our district did something similar. We call it homeroom, and we meet every day too. But we're actually getting rid of it when we go back in person because it's not needed. Has that been considered for students who return in person, to just get rid of advisory Tuesday through Friday, or is that just too complicated?
Well, we're trying to keep some consistency, right? There are actually, there's feedback from students that the advisory time is very valuable for them. So if I'm only coming 2 days a week in person, it gives me those other 2 days a week I can check in with my advisory teacher, right? So, but that may become part of the conversation when we finalize the MOU with our labor partners on how to make it all fit together, because we do have to provide transportation for kids to get here,
Right.
which might need some time from somewhere in the full day.
And so maybe on those in-person days, that's a place to grab time. It's just a suggestion. I'm, you know, you all know I'm immersed in this, so it's like I'm over-informed sometimes. So what else was I going to ask you? The PM classes for in-person students will solely be for in-person students. There will not be any simultaneous expectation of teachers to be doing online and in person, correct?
No, it's all in
Okay.
person. Yep.
Good. And then I know it's such an incredible undertaking to create a schedule, to find out what teachers are willing and able to do well outside of their of what they've mastered as educators. And so once that's put together, we have X number of spots for X number of teachers and X number of classes. What if kids don't sign up for some stuff? I mean, I just think it's going to be, we just do not have a second to waste on this, right? Because we're going to have to, I don't think it's going to be a perfect, 15 in every class. And I know you've probably already thought about that, but anyway, I'll stop. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, so just along those lines, and this may open it up to other grade levels. So the concept is really to be focused on 12th graders. However, there could be opportunity if there's far more teachers available to be able to expand that and open it up to other students as well. So, but I think before we run, we need to take one step. And the one step is to get some kids in school, then get more kids in school, then get them all in school. But if we
Here, here.
Anyone else?
start with putting them all in school and we fall down, it's gonna hurt.
Does that answer your question? Christina,
Yeah, yes, thank
are you
you.
okay with that?
Yep.
Anyone else?
Yeah, you have Trustee Rojas has his hand up.
Yes, sir.
Right. Thank
Go
you,
ahead,
President
sir.
Tavera. I know that last board meeting, I was the one that brought up childcare. I talked about three checked off items, which was vaccination, childcare, and ventilation. And probably what I should have done is I should have clarified what childcare means, because I've been speaking with staff members, teachers, parents, students. And what I meant with childcare was that it would be more like daycare, because we have teachers that have students that are going half a day. And so that becomes a problem, because when they are coming back to school, who will take care of the kids when they go back to school? So we were talking about kind of coming up with alternative options. And so the community stepped up and they sent a list of all childcare providers that can help. And also, if we have the students going a full day, this would solve this problem, because I asked, what were the teachers doing before we went into this pandemic? And so before they didn't have any problem, because there's children were going full time. And so I go, that's a good idea. Maybe if they go full time instead of going at this proposal in-person learning where they only go 90 minutes, that would really solve that problem. And then also at one board meeting, I kind of came up with a lot of pandemics that we had in the United States. The last one, it was the 2009, the H1N1. A lot of us knew it as the swine flu. Now this swine flu, there were 60 million cases, 274,000 hospitalizations, and 12,000 deaths with this pandemic. But yet that did not disrupt our community. It did not close our schools. It did not cause any of our business shut down, did not cause any of our families to move out of the state, which is happening right now. So I've been looking at the medical statistics and also find out what other counties are doing or what's working, just so that we can safely bring back our students. And I've heard the letters, some parents express concern about normal schooling, 100% safe. There's not going to be any safe after this pandemic. This is something that I called it an endemic that will be with us for the rest of our life. It will be like the virus flu, where we have to get a shot every year. So after a year, we're 1 year smarter. We have a safety plan in place that we've been working on. And I believe that it's something that will safely work for us. I mean, Marin County, back in September of 2020, they had 40,000 students go back to school and 5,000 teachers. And out of all of those that went back to school, there were only 7 cases that were infected. And look at their high schools, there were 0 cases. So our school has about 17,000 students. So say half of them decide to go back to school, that's only 8,000 students. And also what I've noticed that a lot of health experts and the media are starting to notice is that back in March of 2020, they said the primary drivers of COVID-19 were the students. Now they're starting to say that they were wrong and that they shouldn't have closed down the schools. And I also support Trustee Sassy Jones about having not just focus on the 8th graders and the seniors, but let's focus on the 7th, 8th graders, 9, 10, 11, 12. Because at the last meeting, I talked about the mental health going from 24 to 31% increasing. There's also new evidence that shows that not only mental health has been increasing, but there are also new conditions arising: suicidal ideation, eating disorders, failing classes. Those are new conditions that are happening in our children. And so if we vote with the phase in reopening the second option, we're giving our families the choice to decide if they want to keep their children at home or the choice if they want to send their children to school. The first option, it deprives the families of a choice. If we go with in-distance learning, it only gives the families the option to stay home, but there's no other choice for the families. I mean, our students, the ones that know best our students are our families, so they should be able to decide what's best for their children, keep them at home or send them to school. And 2 points I just want to throw out to keep in mind is I want to protect the instruction for our students. I want to make sure that technology is installed adequately in our classrooms. I understand there's teachers have like 8 gigabytes of RAMs in their computers. Is that enough to continue with distance learning? That's one of the questions. The other is to protect the social, emotional aspect of our students. So with that, I mean, have the ones that are suffering at home, that are seeing the mental health increase, given the option to go to school. But let's not try and do it for 90 minutes. Sometimes they need more than 90 minutes. And we've been seeing a lot of cases with families that's been talking about how they've been seeing their children. I mean, I have preschool kids. I have 2 of them, and they've been going to school for the past 3 weeks. And they've been practicing the social distancing and the face covering. And so what some health experts have noticed is that face covering and the distancing, that itself is 90% of the reduction of this transmission. So if we implement the other, then we have a greater chance of being safe in the classroom. And given that this epidemiological evidence and looking for very practical pressures exerted in the policy that will be considered and implemented in future pandemics, I think that we should all look at in the future at the perceived severity and the perceived impact of this pandemic virus that has caused on our children's health, and be able to prepare and make the wise decision as to what is best for our children. So in short, I'm just saying, I support the phase-in reopening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes,
Trustee
Pat.
there you go. Cool.
I would like to share that, first of all, I want to thank the staff for bringing us the plan that we had the opportunity to review today. And I feel really strongly that it is time for us to start having the students go back to school. I do. I believe it's time. However, we do still have students that are not comfortable going back. And so I think with the option 2, the phase in is a perfect opportunity for the students that are ready to go back, and, to give the seniors and the 8th graders, the opportunity to go back and finish is a great plan. And also gives the district the opportunity to see what are the glitches, if any, and that way they can be worked out and be ready to have more students come back. We still have the district needing to work out with, the stakeholders. We still have the district to work things out with our employee groups, the labor partners. And so I feel totally comfortable with opening the school now for the seniors and the 8th graders. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
On the busing, how many people are you going to allow on the bus, Dan?
So
Sorry.
that's okay. I had that conversation this week. There are guidelines for transportation, so it's every other seat. So buses are give or take a third of normal full. So we're going to have to increase bus routes. So your decision tonight will allow us to then put all of the urgency on getting all of these things worked out, with figuring out how many kids need to come in, are going to come in, how many teachers are going to come in, matching them all up, and then figuring out transportation routes.
So what's gonna happen then? Let's say 20 kids can go on a bus and there's 25 kids standing there to get on the bus. What are we gonna do with the other 5 kids? Are you gonna send them to the bus?
Yeah, yeah. So we'll have to look at increasing routes. Increasing drivers and buses can be difficult at sometimes, but we'll have to look at what that means. Maybe 2 different passes to the same route, or readjusting the routes for maybe one of the pickups has less students and they can double back, that kind of thing.
On your second option there, then with the busing, are you gonna have them do like regular school then? Where the buses are doing junior high and then high school, or vice versa? So they're gonna go on different routes?
Well, we talked about that too, right? So there might be a way to combine the middle and high school kids to pick up at one stop to maximize that. So Anna will be working with the transportation director. They have software that can manage all of that depending on how many kids at each spot.
Okay,
Anything else, sir?
no, that's it.
Dude, Sandra. Sandra.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to welcome all our community members that are seeing our special meeting tonight. And I'd like to thank them for their input, their emails and texts. And I also like to thank to the organization as Building Healthy Communities, also Padres Unidos, and also Alma Loredo and Gabriela Silva. Those people represent and they're voicing the concerns of our students in our district. So I'd like to thank them all for the input. It's very well appreciated because we are trustees. We make the decision, but we make it based upon the community input. I'd like to share something with you before I go by my questions. On March 8, 21, I watched a webinar given by Professor Rebecca London entitled Back to School. Back to School, what school needs to consider in reopening their doors. Rebecca is an associate professor of sociology at the University of Santa Cruz, where my husband attended it and graduated from. Professor London states that many students and teachers returning to school will return with COVID-19 related trauma. That's something that I haven't heard my colleagues mention about it, so I'm doing it just to share with you. The related trauma could be caused by the loss of a friend or family member to pandemic. Other related stressors could be financial stressors, such as unemployment, food insecurity, or housing insecurity brought about by the same pandemic. I believe that when our students and teachers return to our school, we need to provide them with counseling and social emotional support services to assist them with any COVID-19 related trauma they might be experiencing. I would like to recommend that teachers check in with their students about any related trauma they might be experiencing. I would like to encourage counselors to run COVID-19 related counseling sessions with students. I would also like to recommend that principals organize COVID-19 related trauma support groups with their teachers. This is very important because we all know that students cannot learn well if they are experiencing extended and prolonged trauma. This is something that I work on it and wanted to share with you that as we're thinking in reopening our schools, we're just focusing ourselves in the interest of a student safe. But in reality, you know, COVID-19 hit the whole community, the whole family. And so by sharing that with you, I would like to request our superintendent to really make sure that we provide counseling to our teachers, you know, as well, and whoever needs it. Okay, what I've seen tonight in the reopening of the school, and after I hear so much input, yes, in favor or not, I do get a sense that because what we're offering out there is up to the parents, it's not mandatory, it's optional. And some of the students are really crying out that they want to experience to come back to school. Some of them are not. So I feel comfortable that if we were to adopt, the motion tonight, I can see the beginning of the seed that we need to start planting, prior harvesting, to making sure that as we are incrementing the percentage of students in campus, we also at the same time making sure that we are providing a healthy environment campuses for everyone on board. So I can see and I can relate with some of my colleagues' questions that this will be the beginning of the new era, okay? Because we don't know for sure how many will show up or how many will not. So it's like an experiment that we're offering, to our students to come in and try it out. What else I was going to share with you? Also, thank you, Mr. Burns, for your clarification in regards to what is the reopening of the schools looks like. Because yes, in reality, people were asking me, are they all coming on board at the same time? And I keep saying, no, we cannot house, 3,000 students at Alisal High, or 1,500 students at Alisal High or La Paz. We don't have those rooms. We can only house a certain percentage of students. So what we're bringing in, it has to start with something that we need to focus our minds. And those grades that you are highly recommended to us, which is 12th graders and 8th graders, they are graduating for that grade. And since I've been hearing, the lack of learning that they're lagging behind, so how can we compensate to make sure that these students are capable to go into a higher level by reaching out to them as we're doing it tonight? Prepare them, making sure that they're ready to go into the second level. I do feel that eventually I would like to see the increment of students, but on a timing manner. We're looking into the ending of the school in 2 months from now. And if we were to adopt any of these recommendations tonight, we will look into 3 weeks to implement it. So we got, how many more weeks left to finish the year?
Yeah.
So I do feel that, it's a tried out plan with the hope that eventually, we'll make it better. And at the same time, our district will be working in more following plans, because this is not the final one. I just want the community to understand that when they ask us, do we have a plan on board? Which plan are you talking about? There's so many coming on board until the final decision is made. And COVID-19 is still around, vaccination is here. Teachers wanting to come back to teach, whoever wants to come back, they're welcome. Who does not because they have chronic issues, they're welcome to teach at home. So we have that flexibility. So with that in mind, I will go for it. Thank you, Mr. President Tavera. That's all I
Thank you, Sandra. I think you said your words in the very beginning were right on where they need to be, and I think what people need, they need to understand that our board is quite aware, very aware of what's going on, and we this board is a board that when we need to make the correct decision or the right decision, we make it based on facts and not based on threats or accusations or insinuations, et cetera, et cetera. It took about a year and about a quarter for us to get here. It took about a year and a quarter to disrupt the entire country and not simply the city of Salinas. It took about a year and a quarter for us to be able to pick up the pieces, and we are not finished picking up the pieces, folks. We still have the rest of the year to go. And it's one of several, I think, very difficult decisions that we're going to have to make. And we would not be able to make the decision we're going to make or feel comfortable with our decision if we didn't have good staff working with us and guiding us
Yes.
in a proper way. I'm not saying that other people don't, but I have a lot of confidence in our staff. Okay. And I think a lot of people out there either are talking about something that they have no knowledge of, and some people are talking about something that they do have a lot of knowledge of. Okay. Now, I believe, can you go back, Mr. Burns, to your option 1 and option number 2? Just for a sec for me, please. Okay, I like the next steps. And I think the next steps should be part of your option number 2, because they include our entire approach that we're going to take within our district. I would like to see us include these next steps, because these next steps are issues or ideas that we have been talking about for like the last 3 or 4 or 5 meetings. And I think that they need to be included within your, can you go to your option 1 and 2?
Make a motion. I agree
Well,
with you.
I think they should be part of your next your option number 2. That way, everybody in this town knows exactly what it is that we're doing and why we are doing it. Okay, and that we as a board can be able to address not just these 3 issues here, but those other issues you're talking about that are extremely important to this whole discussion that we've been having for the last couple of months. People assume that this board is not transparent. They assume that we're holding back information. They assume that we are just making a decision based on money that's coming from the state. And those are ideas that are not true. We are trying to make sure that our students are safe and that they're getting a proper education. We need to make sure we are making sure that our staff, our classified employees who live and work in our area, by the way, and whose kids attend all of our schools, are protected. And we need to make sure that our teachers are protected, every single one of them. We have never been faced with this before. We have never been here before. And nobody else up and down this valley or in this county or in this state or in this area or in this country or in this hemisphere has ever been here before. Okay. And we are making a decision based on the best information that we have. And I'm totally honored to be able to sit with the board members that I sit with and to work with the staff that we have, because we're all trying as hard as we can. And all we can do is try. It'd be a heck of a lot different if we didn't. So, Mr. Burns, I mean, if it's okay, I would love to include those other steps to your idea, option number 2 that you have right here, because that is what we are going to be doing.
Yes.
And I think we need to be totally clear with everybody how we plan to proceed. Okay.
I agree.
So, I don't know how
President Tabera, can we call for the question? Can I make a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
I-
You
I
can make the
second the
motion.
motion.
We're not ready to call for the question because no one's made the motion yet, right? So you made the
I'll make
motion.
the motion.
We have
I'll
a
second.
So
Seconded by
can I, good, sorry, go ahead.
Discussion. Any discussion?
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Yes,
I don't
ma'am.
think, I just like to make a comment. I think we had a great input, a great discussion about this, and it's very transparent. And
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
glad that you're asking for that extra edition so people can see what we're gonna be working through within the incoming months. And I do feel that the board is working, in collaboration with the same idea. And I'm just happy to see these results. So that's all, Mr.
Thank you very much. I am so glad that we heard from the students and from other parents, because this issue is everybody's issue. This COVID-19 is everybody's issue. I mean, most of the cases were in two particular areas that drove the entire county to be the color it was. And those two areas happen to be in our district, in our high school district. And I think we're all aware of that. We've tried to make people aware of it. So we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. We have any more discussion?
Yeah, can we go back and ask what is the motion?
Thank you. I motion that we approve option 2, phase in reopening.
I'll second that.
Discussion. What
Action,
about?
Mr. Tavera.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Action 2, but the addition of the next steps.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, gotcha.
Can you modify your motion, Trustee Jones?
I would like to make a motion that we approve option 2 and ensure that those necessary next steps occur as a result.
And I'll second that again.
Thank you, Trustee Rubio.
Okay, so you don't want them written as for discussion. You don't want them to be included within whatever it is we vote on?
Yeah, she included.
No,
them.
she does. Yes, she
Well,
does.
no, because the way she described it, it's implied. It's not written down and part of. To me, that means it was implied. And implication is not transparent.
So let me just repeat it. So Trustees Azzi Jones, are you okay with approving, making the motion to approve option 2 and including in writing the next steps as part of option 2?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay,
and I'll second that.
okay. Any further discussion?
You seconded 3 times.
Thank you very much, board. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. I guess now can we hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the
Let's move
motion.
to adjourn.
Motion by Trustee Rubio, seconded by Trustee Ocampo. Do we
Thank
hear
you.
any discussion?
No.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed
Aye.
to the motion, say no. Motion carries. Thank you very much, board and staff. That was
Good night,
good.
guys.
That was really
Thank you.
good.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you.
We did
Thank you.